What would you do if your own child plotted your death for money? Imagine overhearing the people you raised, the ones you sacrificed everything for, planning to stage your accidental fall just to cash out your life insurance. Shocking? Heartbreaking? If you've ever witnessed betrayal this deep, share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're watching from the very beginning, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from today. I still remember the exact smell of that autumn afternoon in Seattle, the crisp bite of the air, the faint trace of exhaust from the traffic on 3rd Avenue, and the sweetness of the chocolate cake cooling in the passenger seat beside me. It was Ethan's favorite. For 32 years, I had baked that cake on his birthdays, on the first day of law school, even on the day he got sworn in as an attorney. It was my way of saying, "I'm proud of you. You're still my boy." That afternoon, I decided to surprise him. No phone calls, no texts, just me, his mother, showing up with a cake, hoping to see his smile, the same one I'd cherished since he was 8 years old. My heart was light, though my knees ached climbing out of my old Ford sedan. When I spotted his silver Lexus parked in the far corner of the underground garage, a playful idea crossed my mind. What if I hid in the back seat, and when he opened the door, I jumped out with the cake? It sounded silly, almost childish, but after all the distance that had grown between us since his marriage, I longed for a simple, innocent laugh. I tugged at the door handle unlocked. My lips curved into a grin as I slipped inside, crouching low behind the driver's seat, clutching the cake box. The leather smelled faintly of his cologne, sharp and expensive. For a moment, I let myself believe this would be fun. Minutes ticked by. My heart thumped with the anticipation of a mother's harmless prank. Then came the footsteps. The driver's door opened. Ethan slid in, setting his briefcase on the seat with a sigh. But before I could pop up and say, "Surprise!" the passenger door opened. He wasn't alone. A woman slipped inside. I only needed to hear her laugh to know who it was, Marissa, his wife. My first thought was tender. How sweet, they're leaving together after work. I pressed my palm over my mouth, stifling a giggle. But then Marissa's voice changed, icy and deliberate, like glass breaking inside a velvet glove. "Are you absolutely sure no one will suspect anything when it happens?" My breath caught. I froze, every nerve sharp as glass. Ethan's voice, steady, calm, professional, answered her. "We've gone over this 1,000 times. The plan is perfect. Mom will have a very natural, very believable accident. A woman her age slipping on those old stairs. No one will question it." My blood went cold. For a moment I wondered if I had misheard, if exhaustion was twisting his words. But then Marissa spoke again, her tone laced with greed. "After the funeral, when the dust settles, we can sell that house for $200,000. Add her 50 grand in savings, and the life insurance another 100,000, and we'll finally live like we've dreamed." The box in my hands grew heavy, my arms numb. I felt the walls of the car closing in. My son. My only son. The boy I had raised alone since his father's construction accident. The boy I sold my wedding ring for so he could have a computer in high school. That boy was calmly discussing how to stage my death. My chest constricted. I tried not to gasp, not to sob, not to give myself away. My body trembled so violently I thought they might hear my teeth chatter. Then Ethan asked, "Uncle Robert and Aunt Janet are on board, right?" The names cut deeper than a knife. "My brother. My sister-in-law," Marissa replied with a dismissive laugh. "Of course. Robert's desperate since losing his job. And Janet's been saying for years your mother's stingy. They think it's time the family got what it deserves." Stingy. That word was a dagger. Every penny I ever saved, I saved for Ethan. I scrubbed other people's toilets, carried buckets that bent my back, went to bed with my hands raw from bleach. I never bought myself a new dress so he could wear decent clothes, never ate steak so he could have his textbooks. And now Stingy. Tears slipped silently down my cheeks, dripping onto the cake box. They went on, mapping out every detail, the timing, how to make it look like a fall, how they'd act devastated at the funeral. Marissa even rehearsed her grief-stricken voice. And then, as if my heart wasn't already torn in two, Ethan's voice lowered to a chilling calm. "The life insurance will help too. With that payout, we'll finally be free. Free. The word echoed inside my skull. Free of me, the woman who had given him her life. When they finally stepped out of the car, their footsteps fading into the hum of the garage, I remained crouched another 10 minutes, paralyzed, fighting for air. At last, I forced my trembling body out of the car and stumbled across the cold concrete floor. My legs felt like glass, my chest hollow. The Sylvia who had entered that Lexus, a mother full of love, hope, and forgiveness, died in that back seat. The woman who emerged was someone else entirely. I climbed into my own car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, eyes blurred with tears. Seattle's skyline shimmered through the windshield, but I saw nothing. The city buzzed with life, unaware that mine had just collapsed. The drive home was a blur. Every red light, every corner store, every raindrop on the windshield seemed surreal, like I was moving through a dream that wouldn't let me wake. My mind replayed every word. Accident, 200,000, Stingy, life insurance. When I finally reached my house, the same house I'd fought to keep through decades of scrubbing floors, I sank onto the couch, the cake still untouched beside me. My sobs shook the walls. How do you survive hearing your own child plotting your death? How do you reconcile 32 years of sacrifice with 32 seconds of betrayal? The night stretched endless, my eyes burning from tears, my body shivering though the heater hummed. I pressed my face into my hands, whispering Ethan's name as if prayer could undo what I'd heard. But prayer could not erase the truth. My son wanted me gone. As dawn crept across the Seattle sky, painting my living room in pale gold, a new thought forced its way into my shattered mind. I have to know how deep this betrayal goes. Was Ethan acting alone? Or was my entire family complicit? I rose, wiping my swollen eyes, a strange new resolve stiffening my spine. If they thought I would go quietly, they didn't know me at all. I would find out the truth no matter what it cost. But what I uncovered next would prove even darker than I could imagine. The morning after that terrible revelation, the world outside my window looked the same, maple leaves scattered across the front yard, a delivery truck groaning down the street, the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. But inside me, nothing was the same. My chest felt hollow, my bones heavy with a grief so sharp it seemed to pierce through skin. I brewed coffee the way I had for 40 years, but when the pot hissed and filled the kitchen with its warm aroma, I couldn't bring myself to drink it. What use was comfort when the very people I had lived for were planning my death? I sat at the kitchen table, fingers trembling around a chipped mug, replaying Ethan's words in my head. Mom will have a very natural, very believable accident. Those words clung to me like frost. I forced myself to breathe, to think. My son wasn't alone in this. He had said names: Uncle Robert, Aunt Janet, my brother, my sister-in-law, people who had sat at this very table, eating the meals I cooked, laughing during Christmas dinners, people who had held my hand after Robert, my husband, died in that construction accident. I couldn't fathom it. Robert Hargrove Sr., my older brother, the one who was supposed to protect me after our parents passed, and Janet, his wife, sharp-tongued but always smiling at church. Could they truly be part of this conspiracy? The ache in my chest told me yes. As I sat there, memories rose like ghosts I couldn't push away. I was 27 when Robert died, not my brother, my husband, my Ethan's father. He had been working construction on a half-finished high-rise downtown when a steel beam slipped from its harness. The doctors said it was quick. I never believed them. We had no savings, no insurance, nothing but this small, creaky house on the outskirts of Seattle. Overnight, I became a widow with an 8-year-old boy looking up at me, asking, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I promised him yes, even when I wasn't sure. I scrubbed toilets in office buildings, vacuumed carpets in houses with views of Puget Sound I could never afford. My hands cracked and bled from bleach, my back bent carrying buckets up narrow staircases. But each paycheck went straight into the future. Ethan's notebooks, Ethan's shoes, Ethan's dream. When he turned 15, he needed a computer for school projects. All the other kids had shiny new desktops. For me, it would cost 3 months of work. I sold my wedding ring, Robert's last gift, to buy that computer. Ethan never knew. I never told him. I wanted his heart free of guilt. And when he announced in high school that he wanted to become a lawyer, I swore I'd make it happen. Tuition was $20,000 a year, an impossible number. I swallowed my pride and went to my brother, Robert Sr., who worked for an insurance company back then. I remember standing in his kitchen, twisting my apron strings, asking if he could lend me part of the money. He looked at me as if I had asked him to cut off his arm. "Lydia, I can't risk my savings on your son's impossible dreams. He should get a job and forget about law school." I left that house humiliated, tears stinging my eyes, but I didn't give up. I added a night shift at a veterinary clinic, cleaning cages until my arms ached. On weekends, I sold tamales, empanadas, cakes, anything to bring in extra dollars. Some nights, I was so tired I'd collapse at the kitchen table while Ethan studied beside me. He'd cover me with a blanket before tiptoeing to bed. "Your job is to study, son. Leave the rest to me," I used to say, and I meant it. Every sacrifice, every dollar was for him. So when I heard his voice in that Lexus, cold and calculating, talking about my death like a legal strategy, I felt something inside me break. And when I realized Robert Sr. and Janet were part of it, the break split even deeper. The second night after overhearing Ethan and Marissa, I decided to find out for sure. I needed proof, not just whispers in a parking garage. Robert and Janet lived just 2 miles away, in a modest townhouse near Lake City. I drove there unannounced, heart hammering against my ribs. It wasn't like me to show up without calling, but grief had burned away my hesitation. When Robert opened the door, his face flickered with something surprise, guilt, before smoothing into a stiff smile. "Lydia, what are you doing here so late? I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" My voice wavered, but I forced strength into it. Inside, Janet sat on the couch, TV remote in hand. She turned it off the moment she saw me. Her smile was thin, brittle. We sat in the living room, and I cut to the chase. "Robert, is it true you lost your job?" His face flushed crimson. He glanced at Janet, who tightened her jaw. "How did you find out?" he asked. "That doesn't matter. What matters is why you didn't come to me. I'm your sister. If you needed help, I would have found a way." They exchanged a look, silent but heavy. Then Robert's eyes hardened. "Some savings?" he said, mocking. "Lydia, we all know you've got more than just some savings. You've been hoarding money for years while we struggled." His words hit me like a blow. I worked 14-hour days to send Ethan to college. That money wasn't hoarded, it was sacrifice. Janet leaned forward, venom in her tone. "Exactly. Everything for Ethan. You never thought about helping Robert when he needed college money. But for your little prince, there was always a way. Don't act innocent. You've always played favorites." My chest tightened. Their resentment poured out like poison, accusations twisting the truth until I hardly recognized it. "Robert," I whispered, "if you needed money, I could help. I can lend you $10,000 right now." Janet laughed, cold and sharp. "10,000? We know exactly what you've got. The house is worth $200,000. You've got $50,000 in savings. The life insurance? $100,000. And you offer 10 like it's charity?" I froze. They knew too much. Every figure, every detail of my finances, things I had never shared. Someone had been digging into my life. "Where did you hear all that?" I demanded, voice trembling. Silence. Robert's eyes flicked away. Janet crossed her arms, daring me to challenge her. I rose from the couch, my legs weak. "I think I have my answer," I said quietly, heading toward the door. "Lydia, wait!" Robert called after me. But I was already gone, the night air biting my cheeks as I stumbled back to my car. Driving home, the reality pressed down like a stone on my chest. It wasn't just Ethan and Marissa. It wasn't just greed from a young couple drowning in debt. It was my brother, my own flesh and blood. They saw me not as family, not as the sister who once split sandwiches with Robert during childhood, not as the aunt who babysat their children, but as a bank account waiting to be emptied. Every memory of family dinners, every birthday candle we had blown out together, crumbled under the weight of their betrayal. I realized then, I wasn't facing a misunderstanding. I was facing a conspiracy. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the truth settled cold in my veins. My death had already been written, rehearsed, agreed upon by the people I loved most. But if they thought I would simply wait for them to strike, they were wrong. I whispered into the darkness, almost to myself, if they want me to have an accident, I'll give them one. But it will be on my terms. Because the only way to expose them would be to die at least, to let them believe I had. And so, as dawn crept into the sky, painting my bedroom in faint gray light, I asked myself the question that would change everything. Could I really plan my own death? Seattle glimmered that Friday night, rain-washed streets reflecting neon from the storefronts, headlights streaking across the slick pavement. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, hands trembling as I adjusted the green dress Ethan had specifically asked me to wear. It had been hanging untouched in my closet for years, a modest little thing, nothing glamorous. Yet somehow, knowing that he wanted me to wear it tonight made the fabric feel heavy, like a shroud. Why that dress? Why would my son care about such a detail? I smoothed down my hair, dabbed on a touch of lipstick, and forced myself to breathe. On the surface, it looked like a simple family dinner. But inside, my heart rattled with the dread that it was something far darker. At precisely 7, a sharp knock rattled the door. "Mom?" Ethan's voice rang, practiced sweet. I opened the door to find him standing tall, dressed in a dark blazer, his jaw clean-shaven. Marissa hovered beside him, a silk scarf looped elegantly around her neck, her smile polished like glass. "You look lovely," Ethan said, his eyes flickering over me, though there was a strange distance behind his compliment. I forced a smile. "Thank you, dear, let's go." We drove in near silence through the glowing streets. Ethan made small talk about his latest case at the firm, about the weather turning colder. Marissa chimed in about a charity gala she wanted to attend. But beneath their words, there was a stiffness like lines rehearsed for a play. I nodded and smiled at all the right moments, but inside I was watching every twitch of their faces, every sidelong glance. At one red light, I caught Ethan staring at my hands folded in my lap. He quickly looked away. Marissa, on the other hand, studied me openly, like a jeweler inspecting a stone for cracks. The Italian restaurant in Belltown was warm and candlelit, with polished wood tables and the faint scent of garlic drifting through the air. A violinist played softly in the corner. Couples leaned close over wineglasses, laughter spilling between them. To anyone else, it was a cozy Friday night. To me, it felt like the set of a performance where I was both actor and victim. The hostess led us to a corner booth. Marissa slid in beside Ethan, leaving me across from them, like a witness on the stand. "You should order whatever you want, Sylvia," Marissa said brightly, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Tonight is on us." I smiled faintly, though my stomach nodded. "That's kind of you." I opened the menu, but the words blurred. What use was pasta or wine when my life itself hung in their hands? The conversation began politely enough: work, weather, the new condo they were considering. But soon their questions shifted. "So, Mom," Ethan began, his tone soft, almost tender. "How have you been feeling lately? Any dizziness? Shortness of breath? Trouble with the stairs?" The fork froze halfway to my lips. My heart lurched. I forced a laugh. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I've lived in that house for 30 years. I know every step." "Still," Marissa chimed in smoothly, "accidents don't care how familiar we are with a place. You really should consider moving into a one-story apartment, safer for someone your age." The word accident hung in the air like smoke. I swallowed hard. I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly capable. Ethan reached across the table, touching my hand lightly. His palm was warm, but his eyes were cold. "Mom, we just worry. We want you around for a long time, which is why we also think it's important you review your will." There it was, the mask slipping. I kept my expression calm, though my chest thundered. "I already have a will. Everything goes to you, of course." A fleeting look of satisfaction passed between Ethan and Marissa, too quick for most to notice, but not for me. "That's good," Ethan said smoothly. "But laws change. I can help you update it, make sure it's airtight. I want your wishes to be honored properly." I nodded, pretending to consider, though inside, bile rose. The irony of my son, my would-be killer, offering to draft the very document that would reward him for my death nearly made me choke. Marissa insisted I order dessert, though I refused. She pouted, her painted lips curling in annoyance. "You need to enjoy life, Sylvia," she said, her tone strangely pointed. "You never know how much time you have." I forced a smile. "That's true, but I'm planning to be here for many more years." The air between us tightened. When the bill came, Ethan paid without hesitation, sliding his credit card across the table with a flourish, as though generosity could mask conspiracy. "Let us drive you home, Mom," he offered, his tone unusually firm. The rain had started again, misting across the windshield as we pulled into my driveway. I reached for the door handle, but Ethan stopped me. "Wait, we'll walk you inside. It's dark. Those stairs can be dangerous." My throat tightened. Together, they flanked me as I climbed the steps. Each creak of the wood felt amplified, each shift of my weight scrutinized. I could feel their eyes mapping every risk: the loose rug at the landing, the dim bulb above the porch, the handrail slightly wobbly from years of use. Inside, Marissa drifted through the rooms, her heels clicking against the hardwood. She paused at the staircase leading to the second floor. "You really should replace this lighting, Sylvia. These shadows are dangerous." Ethan bent down, tugging at the edge of the rug. "And this, Mom, you could trip here so easily." I stood frozen, clutching my coat tight, my mind screaming. "They're rehearsing. This is reconnaissance." They lingered only a few minutes longer, offering syrupy goodbyes and hollow hugs before leaving into the rain. As their taillights vanished, I sank onto the couch, my body trembling. They had inspected my home as if it were a crime scene waiting for the body. My home, where Ethan had taken his first steps, where birthday balloons had floated on the ceiling, where I had sat up nights helping him with algebra. Now it was nothing more than a stage for my accident. I buried my face in my hands. How could love rot so completely into greed? That night, as the rain hammered against the windows, a thought crystallized with terrifying clarity. I couldn't wait for them to strike. I had to act first. If they wanted me to die on those stairs, I would let them believe I had, but it would be my plan, not theirs. And there was only one person I trusted enough to help me: Beatrice Miller, my neighbor of 20 years, a retired nurse with steady hands and a loyal heart. The next morning, I walked across the street, my pulse thundering, rehearsing the impossible words in my head. "Beatrice, I need your help to fake my death." But could she believe me? And more importantly, could she keep me alive through the most dangerous lie I had ever told? The morning after that cursed dinner, I walked across the rain-damp street toward Beatrice's little blue house, every step weighted with dread. My breath clouded in the cool Seattle air, but inside, my pulse was hot and wild. Beatrice opened the door before I even knocked, her silver hair pulled back in a braid, her eyes sharp and steady, the way they always had been when she worked as a nurse. "Sylvia," she said softly, her voice catching at the sight of me. "You look like you haven't slept in a week." I stepped inside, clutching the truth I had been holding like a live wire. "Bea, I need your help. To fake my death." Her eyes widened, but she didn't laugh, didn't scold. She only studied me with a nurse's calm, as if she were taking my pulse without touching me. Over mugs of coffee at her kitchen table, the same table where we had once baked cookies with her grandchildren, I poured out everything. The overheard conversation in Ethan's car, the dinner, the inspection of my stairs, the will. My words tumbled out in broken gasps, part confession, part plea. By the time I finished, Beatrice's face had gone pale, her knuckles white around her mug. "My God," she whispered, "this is monstrous." Tears blurred my vision. "If I wait, Bea, they'll kill me. If I confront them, they'll deny everything. I need a way to outsmart them. I need a way to die on my terms, so they reveal who they really are." Beatrice sat back, closing her eyes. "You're asking me to risk everything, but you're also asking me to save your life. And Sylvia," her voice hardened, "if half of what you told me is true, you're right. They won't stop until you're gone." For a long moment, the kitchen was silent except for the hum of her old refrigerator. Then Beatrice opened her eyes and nodded. "All right, we'll do this, but we'll do it carefully. If we're going to trick death, it has to be flawless." For days we whispered in shadows. Beatrice pulled out old medical textbooks, scribbled notes on yellow pads, made calls to retired colleagues under the guise of hypothetical questions. She explained the physiology, how certain medications could slow my heart rate and breathing until they were nearly undetectable. "It's dangerous," she admitted, her brows furrowing. "We'll have only a small window. Too much and you won't wake up. Too little and the paramedics will notice." I swallowed hard, feeling the enormity of what I was asking her to do. "B, I trust you with my life because you're the only one who cares if I live." She squeezed my hand across the table, her eyes misting. "You've always trusted me with your secrets. Now you're trusting me with your heartbeat. I won't fail you." Seattle has a way of hiding secrets in plain sight, people rushing past each other, umbrellas tilted against the drizzle, no one asking questions. That anonymity became our shield. Beatrice discreetly acquired what we needed: beta blockers, sedatives, even a small vial of atropine to revive me if things went wrong. She stored everything in a plain canvas bag that looked like any old woman's knitting kit. "I feel like we're planning a heist," I muttered one night as she spread the items across her kitchen table. Beatrice smirked. "We are. Except the vault we're breaking into is your grave and you're coming back out of it." We rehearsed every detail: how she would discover me collapsed on the floor, how she would call 911 with a trembling voice, how she would guide the paramedics to pronounce me without suspicion. "Remember, Sylvie," she said firmly, "you can't move, you can't breathe visibly, you can't let panic take over. You have to let yourself go limp like you're already gone." I nodded, but fear crawled in my throat like a fist. "What if I can't wake up, Bea?" Her eyes locked on mine. "Then I'll drag you back myself." We chose a Sunday afternoon, when Ethan and Marissa would be at her parents' for their weekly brunch, when Alvin and Patricia would be nowhere near. The timing mattered. It gave us a clean window before the vultures arrived. I wore my yellow dress, the one Ethan always said made me look cheerful. That irony nearly broke me. Beatrice arrived at exactly 2 p.m., her canvas bag over her shoulder, her lips pressed tight as she set it down. "Are you ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." We prayed together briefly, something I hadn't done in years. Then she prepared the injections. The first burn of the sedative felt like sinking into honey. My eyelids grew heavy, my heartbeat slowed, each thud echoing like a drum in a distant canyon. Beatrice's voice floated above me, calm but urgent. "Breathe shallow. Don't fight it. Let it take you." Darkness closed in, but just before it swallowed me whole, I whispered, "Don't let me really die, Bea." I heard voices, distant, echoing. Female, early 60s, unresponsive, no pulse detectable, likely cardiac arrest. Hands touched me, lifted me, shined lights in my eyes, but through the fog of slowed blood and shallow breath, I heard Beatrice's trembling voice. "Please, she's gone, isn't she?" And then the words, "Time of death, 3:42 p.m. I was dead. Officially. When I opened my eyes again, hours later, it was to the dim light of Beatrice's basement. My body felt like lead, my tongue dry as dust. Beatrice hovered over me, relief flooding her lined face. "You scared the hell out of me, Sylvie," she whispered, wiping tears. "But it worked. You're officially dead," I croaked. "Then it begins." Over the next hours, Beatrice set up a small monitor, linking the hidden cameras we'd placed in my house. And then we waited. The first to arrive were Ethan and Marissa, their laughter carrying through my empty living room as they used the key I'd left. Within minutes, Alvin and Patricia joined them, voices sharp with anticipation. I watched from the basement, my heart pounding with the weight of betrayal, as my family circled my belongings like vultures at a carcass. But then suddenly, Ethan's voice cut through the chatter. "Let's not waste time. We need to find the bank documents now, before anyone else shows up." Before anyone else shows up. The words struck me cold. Who else did they expect? Who else was tangled in this conspiracy? The rain had been steady all week, a gray curtain draping over Seattle, as though the entire city was mourning. But in Beatrice's basement, where I now lived in a half-life of shadows, there was no time for mourning. Every drop against the glass block windows sounded like a countdown to Saturday, the day when I would rise from the dead in front of the very people who had already buried me. Beatrice had transformed her tidy basement into a war room. Extension cords ran across the floor like tangled vines. Folding tables groaned beneath laptops, small cameras, labeled flash drives, and stacks of yellow legal pads filled with her looping handwriting. The air smelled of coffee, printer ink, and the faint sharpness of rubbing alcohol from the small kit of medications she still kept nearby. She moved briskly, almost militarily, as if her decades in nursing had prepared her for this campaign of truth. "They're too sure of themselves," she muttered as she adjusted the focus on one of the hidden camera feeds. "That arrogance will be their undoing." I wanted to share her confidence, but most nights, when the screens dimmed and Beatrice went upstairs to bed, I sat staring at the grainy replay of my family laughing in my living room. Their voices looped endlessly in my head. Patricia scoffing about my stubbornness. Marissa insisting cremation was cheaper and faster. Ethan calmly calling the real estate agency as if my life had been nothing more than a property listing. Each replay carved deeper into me, and I asked myself over and over, was I really strong enough to walk back into their world and look them in the eye? On Tuesday, Beatrice introduced me to the one person who would make sure my story didn't disappear into denial. Her name was Maria Elena Vargas. She arrived at dusk, her coat damp from the drizzle, her short hair slicked against her forehead. She carried herself with the calm urgency of someone used to listening to other people's pain for a living. Her handshake was firm, her eyes sharp, and the first words out of her mouth were not polite small talk but a test. "Mrs. Monroe," she said, her voice low but unwavering. "Beatrice tells me your family tried to kill you. That's either the story of the decade or the most dangerous gamble you'll ever take. Which one is it?" I gripped her hand tighter than I meant to. "It's both." She listened as I unraveled everything, from the moment I climbed into Ethan's car to surprise him, to the dinner where Marissa pressed me about my health, to the night I lay in Beatrice's basement, pretending to be a corpse while my family divided my life into neat percentages. Maria Elena's face remained composed, but her pen scratched furiously across her notebook, and I noticed her knuckles whiten when I repeated Ethan's words. "Mom will have a believable accident. No one will question it." By the end, the room was silent except for the hum of the basement dehumidifier. Then she clicked her pen shut and looked me dead in the eye. "If you have proof, we can make this undeniable. Audio, video, documents. Enough to hold up even in a courtroom." Beatrice slid the laptop toward her and opened the files. The journalist leaned forward, headphones clamped over her ears, and listened to Ethan's calm call to the insurance company, Patricia's cruel laughter, Alvin's desperate pleading about the mortgage. I watched her jaw tighten, watched her shake her head slightly as though even after 20 years of investigative reporting, she still couldn't quite believe the depths of human greed. When the last recording ended, she pushed the laptop back across the table. "This is monstrous. And you're right, if you try to handle this privately, they'll twist it, deny it, maybe even silence you for real. If you're willing, Mrs. Monroe, we'll not only expose them, we'll do it live." The word froze me. Live? Yes. No time for them to invent excuses. No chance to hide. The world will see the truth unfold as it happens. My stomach knotted. To drag my most private wound into the light of millions felt unbearable. But what choice did I have? They had already stripped me of dignity in death. Perhaps public truth was the only dignity I had left. "Do it," I whispered, though my chest trembled. "Let them choke on the truth." From that moment, everything accelerated. Maria Elena made calls that night. Channel 7's producers agreed to station portable cameras in my home, hidden until the moment I revealed myself. 2 police officers were assigned to wait nearby in unmarked cars. A local judge, discreetly briefed, promised to be present during the inheritance meeting so that any arrests would carry immediate weight. My modest home, the place I had scrubbed, painted, and patched for 3 decades, was no longer a house. It was a stage. The next day, Maria Elena returned with a cameraman and recorded a private interview. They wanted background to air alongside the live revelation. I sat in Beatrice's spare bedroom under the harsh glow of a camera light, and I told the story of selling my wedding ring to buy Ethan a computer, of working 14-hour days to pay for his college tuition, of dreaming that my sacrifice would be his wings. Tears slid down my cheeks as I said, I thought sacrifice was love. I never imagined it would be the reason my own son plotted my death. Maria Elena's voice from behind the camera was steady. What do you want people to take away from this? I dabbed at my tears. That family isn't about blood. It's about love. And sometimes the people you call family are the ones who would bury you alive for money. When the camera clicked off, I felt both hollow and strangely lighter. My grief was no longer locked inside my chest. It was recorded, preserved, undeniable. That night, sleep evaded me. I sat by Beatrice's basement window, listening to the patter of rain. In the dark glass, I saw not my 65-year-old reflection, but the faint overlay of my younger self, the girl who once danced barefoot in the kitchen with Robert before tragedy made me a widow. I whispered into the dark, If you're watching me, Robert, give me strength, because tomorrow I will walk into hell. Thursday bled into Friday. Every hour, Beatrice rehearsed me like a stage director. She had me stand at the bottom of the basement stairs, pretending to open the front door, pretending to face my family. She reminded me to keep my spine straight, to let silence work for me before I spoke. Don't rush, she said firmly. They'll crumble under the weight of what they've done. You don't need to scream. Your presence will scream for you. Friday night, she laid dresses across the bed, navy, black, red. Her wrinkled hand hovered over the red. This one. You wore it at Ethan's wedding. Poetic justice. They dressed you in grief. You'll dress yourself in fire. I slipped into the red dress, feeling its fabric cling to me like a second skin. I pinned my hair back, dabbed on lipstick, and when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I startled. The woman staring back at me no longer looked like a trembling mother. She looked like a storm about to break. Look at you, Beatrice whispered, her eyes shining. Not a ghost, a reckoning. Saturday morning arrived heavy and wet. Rain blurred the windows of Beatrice's house, and thunder groaned somewhere far above the sound. My pulse thundered just as loudly. At noon, Maria Elena and her crew slipped quietly into position, checking equipment, testing signals. The police officers waited in their cars, radios on, watching the house. Every piece of the plan was aligned. At 2 p.m., we watched the monitors. My family arrived one by one. Alvin and Patricia entered first, shaking rain from their coats, their faces taut with greed. Patricia clutched a notebook, already jotting numbers like she was balancing a checkbook. Marissa came next, her hair perfectly styled, her perfume filling the room like a mask for her rot. And Ethan, my son, my betrayer, walked in last, holding a folder of legal documents as though he were presiding over a boardroom. He sat in my favorite armchair, the same chair where he once curled against me while I read him stories. My throat tightened, but I forced my hands steady. They're all here, Maria Elena whispered. It's time. Beatrice clasped my hand. Her palm was warm, steady, and trembling all at once. Remember, Sylvie, you've already beaten them once. Now you finish it. I climbed the basement stairs, every step echoing like a drum roll. At the top, I paused with my hand on the doorknob, my heart battering my ribs. Behind me, the cameraman whispered, "We're live." I turned the key in the lock. The metallic click reverberated through the house. Upstairs, voices stilled. "Did you hear that?" Patricia's nervous laugh cracked the silence. "Probably the wind," Alvin muttered, though his voice was brittle. I pushed the door open. The air smelled of betrayal and cheap cologne. And then I stepped inside. For a suspended moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Marissa's hand flew to her mouth. Patricia's notebook fell from her lap. Alvin went pale as chalk. And Ethan, my son, rose to his feet so fast the folder slipped from his hands, scattering papers across the rug. His eyes bulged, his lips parted, and he whispered in horror, "Mom, you're dead." I smiled, a smile sharpened by fire and grief. Surprise. Behind me, cameras surged forward, and Maria Elena's clear voice rang out, "We are live at the Monroe residence. where a woman declared dead just days ago has walked into her own living room to confront the family accused of plotting her murder. Chaos erupted. Patricia screamed. Alvin stammered denials. Marissa clutched Ethan's arm, her face drained of blood. Ethan himself stood rooted, trembling, his lips working for words that wouldn't come. I raised my hand, demanding silence. "Sit down. We're not finished." The weight of my voice silenced them. They obeyed without thought, like guilty children caught red-handed. But before I could deliver the words I had rehearsed for days, before I could pour out 35 years of sacrifice and betrayal, the front door creaked again. Another set of footsteps echoed in the hallway. Everyone turned, and for the first time that day, even I froze. Because the person stepping through that door was someone none of us expected, someone whose presence threatened to unravel everything we had planned. The living room was already a storm of panic when the front door creaked open. Again. All eyes turned toward the hallway. The man who stepped inside was tall, silver-haired, dressed in a charcoal suit, a leather briefcase dangling from his hand. His polished shoes clicked against the hardwood as he froze at the sight of me. His mouth parted slightly, and for the first time that afternoon, silence swallowed the chaos. "Good God," he murmured. "Sylvia Monroe?" The cameras captured everything, the widening of his eyes, the sharp intake of breath. His presence was another twist in a day already split open by betrayal. Ethan shot up from the armchair, his face flushing red. "Mr. Davis, you're early. This isn't—" The lawyer ignored him. His gaze was locked on me, scanning me as if trying to decide whether I was real. "You told me she was dead," he said flatly. His voice carried the clipped tone of a man who had spent a lifetime dealing in facts. "She was?" Ethan stammered, his eyes darting between me and the lawyer. She is. I mean, she must have—" "Stop." My voice cut through his babble like a blade. I stepped forward, heels striking the floor with deliberate force. "No more lies, Ethan. You can't bury me twice." Gasps rippled from Patricia and Alvin. Marissa clutched Ethan's arm, whispering frantically, but the microphones caught her words. "Say something, deny everything." Maria Elena's voice carried above the turmoil, calm and strong, addressing the millions watching live. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you are witnessing is a mother declared dead confronting her own family, who stand accused of plotting her murder for financial gain. And now even their attorney has confirmed he was told she had passed." Patricia shot to her feet, her notebook tumbling to the floor. "This is twisted. You're making us look like villains when all we wanted was money," I snapped. "All you wanted was money. Don't dress it up as care. Don't pretend you loved me." Her mouth snapped shut. The camera zoomed in on her trembling lips, her guilty eyes. Alvin shifted uncomfortably, his leg bouncing like a jackhammer, muttering that this was getting out of hand. But it was Ethan who drew all attention. His face was pale, sweat beading on his temples. He ran a hand through his hair, his lawyer's polish slipping away. "Mom, listen," he began, his tone low, pleading. "It's not what you think. We were trying to prepare. You've been sick, you've been weak. You thought I'd die soon enough, so why wait?" My voice cracked with rage. "You wanted to hurry it along, make it clean, make it look like an accident. I heard you, Ethan. I was in the back seat of your car when you promised Marissa it would look natural. You wanted me gone." His shoulders slumped. His lips trembled, but he couldn't summon words. The silence stretched, heavy and damning. Then Marissa's brittle control shattered. She sprang up, her voice shrill. "Fine. Yes, we talked about it. We were sick of waiting. She's old, she's fragile, and all she does is cling to that house like it's the crown jewels. We were giving her mercy." The word detonated in the room. Mercy. I felt my chest tighten, but not with fear, with pure disgust. "Mercy?" I repeated slowly. "You call planning my death mercy? You call stealing my life insurance mercy?" Maria Elena raised her microphone again, her voice ringing like a bell. "For those just joining, you heard it directly. The daughter-in-law admits on live television that they discussed hastening Sylvia Monroe's death. This is unprecedented." The room fractured into chaos. Patricia shouted denials, her hands clawing the air. Alvin cursed and demanded a lawyer. Marissa tried to backpedal, insisting she didn't mean it that way. But the cameras were unblinking witnesses. Their words had already been carved into stone. Through it all, Ethan sat down heavily, his head in his hands. He looked up finally, his eyes bloodshot, and whispered so softly I almost thought I imagined it. "You should have stayed dead." The words pierced me deeper than any betrayal yet. My knees wobbled, but I caught myself against the edge of the table. For years I had held on to the foolish hope that somewhere inside him was still the boy who hugged me after nightmares. That boy no longer existed. Maria Elena's voice cut in again, steady as steel. "Viewers, you've now heard Ethan Monroe himself admit he told his attorney his mother was deceased. You've heard his wife justify her supposed mercy. And you've heard Sylvia Monroe confront them with her own voice. This story is unraveling in real time." The lawyer, Mr. Davis, finally spoke again. His voice was calm, but his eyes darted nervously toward the cameras. "Mrs. Monroe, I must be careful what I say, but you should know what your son told me, what he promised me. It may not be the full story." A ripple of tension ran through the room. "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat tight. He shifted, his fingers tapping against his briefcase. "Your son wasn't acting entirely on his own. There's someone else outside this family who has an interest in your estate, someone powerful, someone dangerous. The meeting today was not just about dividing assets, it was about finalizing an agreement." The air thickened, heavy enough to choke. My heart pounded so loud I almost didn't hear Patricia gasp or Alvin curse under his breath. "Who?" I demanded. "Who else wants me dead?" Mr. Davis hesitated. His jaw worked. He adjusted his glasses, buying time. Finally, he said, "If I speak the name, I risk my career, my safety. But know this, it reaches beyond your son's greed. You've stepped into something larger than you realize." Maria Elena pressed forward, relentless. "Mr. Davis, are you suggesting there is a larger conspiracy tied to Sylvia Monroe's assets, that her family is only part of a bigger plot?" The lawyer didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. He snapped his briefcase shut with a sharp click and stared at Ethan with something close to contempt. The room seethed with voices, each louder than the last, but my mind spun around one single question. If it wasn't just my family, then who else had been waiting for me to die? Resolution divided by transition. End of chapter 7. I turned to the cameras, my voice trembling but fierce. "You've seen my own blood betray me, but if there is someone else, someone beyond these walls who wanted me gone, then the truth is darker than even I feared." The words had barely left my mouth when the front door rattled again. The knob turned slowly, deliberately. Everyone fell silent. The door opened. Footsteps echoed. And as a shadow crossed the threshold, my heart froze. Because whoever had just entered might be the one person capable of destroying everything. Truth, justice, even my second chance at life. The door swung wider, and the woman who entered carried herself like a storm disguised in silk. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones and a navy coat that glistened from the rain. Her black heels struck the hardwood with a rhythm that silenced even the shouting. She didn't flinch at the cameras, didn't blink at the chaos. Her gaze went straight to me, steady, almost amused. "Mrs. Monroe," she said in a voice smooth as glass, "I didn't expect to see you alive." Maria Elena adjusted her microphone quickly, seizing the moment. "And you are?" The woman removed her gloves one finger at a time, as if the room weren't already breaking apart at the seams. "Victoria Hale, senior executive at Westbridge Financial. Ethan and I have business together." The name hit me like ice water. Westbridge, the bank that denied me loans, the same name scrawled across envelopes I had begged not to open. And now their executive stood in my living room, calmly acknowledging she had a hand in my death sentence. "You," I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. "It wasn't enough that my son betrayed me? You wanted me gone too." She smiled faintly, tilting her head. "Don't dramatize. It's not about wanting you gone. It's about efficiency. Your estate was stagnant, your assets underutilized." Ethan understood. He had ambition. Together, we had a plan. The room erupted. Patricia gasped like she'd been struck. Alvin muttered a string of curses. Marissa clutched Ethan's arm so tightly her nails dug into his sleeve. The cameras zoomed closer, feeding every reaction to the audience watching from their living rooms. Maria Elena's voice rose, sharp and clear. Viewers, what you are witnessing now is not just family betrayal. A corporate executive has admitted on live television that her company had a financial interest in Sylvia Monroe's supposed death. Victoria didn't even flinch. Admitted? No. I've only stated the facts. Business is business. Emotions cloud judgment. Mrs. Monroe should understand that by now. Her words were colder than Ethan's silence. For years I had believed greed had destroyed only my son. Now I saw it stretched further past bloodlines, past walls, into corporations that devoured people like numbers on a ledger. The officers at the door stepped forward, their hands resting on their belts. "Ma'am," one said firmly, "you may want to watch your words. Everything here is being recorded." Victoria's gaze flicked toward them, bored. Then she looked back at me. "You've had your victory, Mrs. Monroe. Your little resurrection has embarrassed your family. But don't fool yourself. One weed doesn't clear a garden. There are dozens more ready to take what you leave behind." I trembled, fury boiling in my chest. "I will not be erased. Not by my son, not by your bank, not by anyone. You think my life is just collateral, but I'm still standing, and I will fight." For the first time, her smile thinned. "Fight then. But the machine doesn't stop. Not for widows, not for mothers, not even for ghosts." The officers moved in then, gripping her arms. She didn't resist. She let them escort her out as though she were attending a meeting, her spine straight, her eyes cold. Ethan panicked, his voice cracking. "Victoria, wait! Don't leave me like this!" But the door shut, swallowing her presence. Silence settled like dust. The cameras kept humming. Patricia collapsed into her chair, sobbing into her hands. Alvin whispered to himself, rocking back and forth. Marissa's eyes darted wildly, searching for escape that wasn't there. And Ethan sat hollow, staring at the door like a man who had just lost the last thread holding him together. I stepped forward, the red dress clinging to me like armor. My voice steadied, stronger than it had been in years. "You plotted my death. You counted my money while I was still breathing, and now the world knows who you are." Maria Elena turned to the camera, her tone clear and solemn. "Sylvia Monroe has survived not only her family's betrayal, but the revelation of corporate interest in her death. Tonight, Seattle, and perhaps the nation, must ask, how deep does greed run?" The officers began taking statements, moving among my family with pens and pads, their voices clipped and professional. Patricia pleaded innocence. Alvin shouted for his lawyer. Marissa denied her own words even as the recordings replayed. Ethan sat silent, his face blank, until finally he whispered without lifting his eyes, "I only wanted to be free of you." The words hit harder than any blow. My chest ached, but I stood taller. "And now you're chained to your own choices." For a brief moment, I felt the weight lift from me. Years of silence, of bending, of sacrificing, all of it crystallized into one truth. I had taken back my voice, but Victoria's words lingered like smoke. The machine doesn't stop. I stared at the rain-streaked window, my reflection wavering. My family was broken, yes, but the faceless hunger she spoke of still prowled beyond these walls. Resolution, divided by transition. End of Chapter 8. The officers closed their notebooks. The cameras dimmed. My living room, once a stage, began to return to stillness. Yet inside me, the question roared louder than ever. Had I truly won? Or had I only lifted the veil on something darker, something waiting for me just beyond the door? And as the thunder rolled over Seattle, I asked myself the one question I feared most. When the machine comes for me again, will I survive a second time? Of all the twists and betrayals, perhaps the most powerful truth to emerge from Sylvia Monroe's story is not about crime or greed or even revenge. It is about resilience. Her journey reminds us that even in the darkest hours, when trust is shattered by those we love most, we still carry within us the power to rise, to speak, and to reclaim our dignity. Many of us, especially in the rush of American life, measure worth by material success, bigger houses, higher salaries, bank accounts that never feel full enough. But this story forces us to stop and ask, what is a life truly worth? Sylvia's son measured it in dollars, a corporation measured it in assets. But Sylvia herself rediscovered that the worth of a life lies in courage, in love freely given, in the ability to protect one's truth even when standing alone. For viewers between 30 and 55, who juggle careers, families, mortgages, and responsibilities, Sylvia's voice speaks loudly. Don't lose yourself in the machine. Don't forget that relationships built on greed will always collapse, but relationships rooted in genuine care endure. The lesson is not simply to beware betrayal, but to value loyalty where it exists, to nurture bonds that money cannot buy, and to protect your own light when others try to extinguish it. Her story is also a call for community. Sylvia found strength not only in her own will, but in allies who chose compassion over profit. It tells us that family is not only blood, it is whoever shows up when the world turns its back. And maybe that is the lasting gift of this tale, to remind us that justice is possible, truth is powerful, and even when broken, the human spirit can rebuild into something stronger, something freer, and something deeply, undeniably alive.